Welcome back to my tutorial of Shadowgate 64 Any%. When we last left off, we were in the town of Castle Shadowgate, and we had just unlocked this large set of double doors using the cemetery key that we got from Caitlin's grandfather. From here, we want to enter the double doors and go into the cemetery. However, you'll notice that we're actually near the cathedral that we were in earlier. That's okay though, there's a couple things here we need to do. We need to actually go to the right and around the right side of the cathedral and examine this wood. Once we have removed the wood, walk forward until you can't anymore, and we're at a gravestone. We actually want to use the dragon tears on the grave itself. Once we've used the dragon tears, equip the Ring of the Dead. And mash A. This will cause a sorcerer to appear. The sorcerer is going to tell us an incantation that we will need for later. This is an extremely important step to not forget. After he's told us the incantation, we can turn, and we're going to turn to our right, and we're going to go through this set of double doors back into the graveyard from earlier in the game. And coming up is our first proper skip within the run. Now, we have the Ring of the Dead equipped, and most of these gravestones have a ghost attached to them, and if we walk too close to the gravestone, a ghost will interact with us and cost us some time. So I find it to be a little important here to try not to scoot the edges of these, but rather try to stay in the relative center of the path so that you don't interact with any ghosts. Once you get past this last gravestone here, this last opening, we're going to go against this right side, because we need to talk to the ghost that is attached to this gravestone. More specifically, though, the flower that the troubadour gave us, we need to put that flower on this person's grave. Now, if we walk too close to the grave, the ghost will appear and explain that they would love for someone to pay respects. We can actually skip this text prompt, so it's one of the few skips in the game. In order to skip this, we need to get close enough to use the flower, but not close enough to interact with the ghost. I like to get all the way against this right side here, and once I get about here, kind of edge forward slightly, and get as much of it on screen as possible, then use the flower. This will actually skip the initial text prompt. We place the flower on the grave, then mash A to talk to the ghost. The ghost will thank you for putting the flower on the grave and will reveal us the location of a secret treasure. After that, we can turn and leave. Again, try to stay in the relative center of the path. If you don't, you can accidentally interact with a ghost like that. I didn't actually press any buttons. Simply getting too close to the grave caused this ghost to appear. So that will lose you some time. So again, since we have the Ring of the Dead equipped, stay in the center of the path. Now you could play it safe and unequip the Ring of the Dead if you like. However, that will also cost you some time from going into your menu. We want to keep it equipped for now. Once we leave the graveyard, we're going to go back into the cathedral to our left. From here, we're going to go to the right, and we're going to go back into the basement of the cathedral. From here, we're going to go to the right, and we're going to go back down into the sewers. Once we're in the sewers, we're actually going to go left and enter the sewers proper. Now, this is the second big skip in the game. This skip is quite difficult. I definitely recommend starting out to play this safe. Once we get in the room, I'll explain how the skip works. If you remember at the beginning of the game, I pointed out this skeleton. And if you remember, a ghost appeared. If we get too close to this skeleton, with the skeleton on screen, and that's important, while we have the Ring of the Dead equipped, we'll get a text prompt where we talk to a ghost named Lucas. This skip, the community has aptly dubbed Lucas Skip. We can skip over talking to Lucas by doing some pretty tricky and careful movement. You can play it safe by unequipping the Ring of the Dead, which will make it to where Lucas doesn't interact with you. But unfortunately, we need the Ring of the Dead equipped at this section of the game in order to actually proceed and talk to a couple ghosts. The way around this is to look directly at the ground, and if you look to your right here, you'll see this column. You want to get against this column and get all the way to the wall. Keep the skeleton off screen to the best of your ability. We want to continue forward, and we want to get to this bridge without ever actually having the skeleton on screen. We call this Lucas Skip. It's really not that hard to do if you do it slowly, but unfortunately doing it slowly really doesn't save us that much time. Doing Lucas Skip quickly takes quite a bit of practice. I recommend making a save here if you can to practice Lucas Skip, or playing it safe and just simply switching over to Jezebel's Pendant, or if you have emulator, you can make a save state and practice it more frequently. Anyway, continue through the door. Then take a left and through this door. From here, we're going to take a right and we're going to go down to the end of the sewers. Now, down here you'll notice there is a skeleton, and we need to talk to the ghost that is associated with this skeleton. Now, if you walk too far forward, you will fall into the water and die. So be very careful. What I like to do is edge forward here, and as soon as you see this text box, don't press anything. You want to examine the skeleton with A, and this ghost will appear. He'll vanish, but he'll come back. And he'll give us this treasure. This treasure is extremely important. We need it to beat the game. Once we have the treasure, turn and you'll see this first entryway. We're going to go through it. From here, you should recognize this room. We want to go back to this rock wall, and we actually want to use the pickaxe. This is why it's important to keep the pickaxe for this very moment. From here, back up through, and back into the Tower of Disciples. In this room, just turn directly to the right and open the door. And then once in this room, we need to go into the door on our right, not the one on our left. If you recall, this is where Caitlin's grandfather was. And now that we've reunited Caitlin with her grandfather, he is going to thank us by giving us an item that we need to proceed to beat the game. Specifically, he gives us what's called the Stone of Thirst. The Stone of Thirst is an extremely important item. Once we have that, we can turn and leave. From here, take a right, down the hallway and up the stairs. And we're going to leave the Tower of Disciples the way we always leave it. Now, this is extremely important. Unequip the Ring of the Dead, or just equip Jezebel's Pendant. From here, take a left, and we're going to go down this corridor. From here, proceed forward, take a slight left, and then a right, and we're going to go in this building here. We're back at the inn area, though, if you remember this area from earlier. We're going to go in this building here. This is the merchant. There are several things you can buy from him with the coins scattered throughout the game on the ground. All of those items are useless. We need to give the merchant the treasure. So select the treasure. He will say, "Wow, where did you get this treasure?" He offers to trade us a violin. There are 3 different violins you can get. Only one of them has the actual purpose that we need. So it's very important to skip over the first violin he offers us. The violin without strings, say no. Then mash A to accept the chipped violin. Once we have the chipped violin, turn to your right, and we'll leave. From here, go directly forward, back down this alleyway, take a left, small right, and back down this corridor. From here, we're going to go forward. We're going to take a left. And then we're going to go into this door on our left. If you recall, I mentioned there was another room in this building that's useful to us. So we're going to go into it. Go forward down the hallway, take a left, and we're going to go into the door with the round top on our right. From here, if you look to our right, you can see a sort of whole area. Do not go past that bookshelf. We want to go into this middle area towards this table. And here, you want to use the chipped violin that we just got from the merchant. Once we use the chipped violin, we'll hear some steps coming up the stairs. We need to hide. Simply go behind this wall and walk forward. We'll get a small scripted scene, and you'll hear someone start to play the violin. Do not interact with him. That's the dungeon keeper. We want to go around the wall, and on this third sort of metal thing, you'll find a key. We want to take this key. Grab the key, turn to your left, take a right, and go down these stairs. Now we're back in the dungeon from the main beginning of the game. Go forward, take a right, look right again, and you'll see this is Agar's cell. We're going to use the dungeon key to open it. Walk straight up to Agar, and use the orb. Once you use the orb, we'll get a small scene where Agar uses it to trap the dungeon keeper. And before we can leave this area, the game forces us to lock the dungeon keeper in the dungeon. From here, leave the dungeon. Go forward, take a right, and we're going to go in the door on our left. There's nothing in that door for us. Once we get out of this door, look left, go down the hallway, take a right, and through the door we go. From here, we're going to take a direct right, and then another right, down this corridor. Go forward, light left, right, and go into the inn. You'll notice that Agar is now reunited with his apprentice. This completes that quest line. More importantly, though, Agar opens his house to us in the second section of town. There are some items that we need in that house. So this section is required for the any percent run currently to beat the game. And we get one nice funny text box where they left without paying their bill. It doesn't mean anything. There's no threat to us. Once we're done with that, we come out of the inn, and we're going to go directly in these double doors in front of us. Then, we're going to take a left, and we're going to go down this long pathway. Take a right, and we're going to continue forward straight through this door here. Once we're in here, go forward, take a right, and then we'll see a door in front of us, but we're actually not going to take that. We're going to take another right, and we're going to go into Agar's house. In Agar's house, there are 3 items we need to collect. The best order to do this, first, look to your left here on this shelf, and we're going to take this flint. Then, we're going to walk all the way to this shelf, and laying under this book right here is a small fang. It's a dragon fang. We are going to take the dragon fang with us. And there's one other item we need in this room. Turn to your left, and we're going to go between these 2 beds. And we're going to examine the back left post of this bed. Turns out it's actually a lever for some machinery. We need that to beat the game. Then we're going to leave the room. Once we get to this area, our next thing is to go... Oh, I'm sorry. Our next thing is to go left, then take a right, and go through this door. we'll find ourselves back in the section of the town that has the large chasm. We're just going to continue forward, stay against the wall to not fall in, and then we'll come up to a door that's on our left. We're going to go in that door. Again, you can make safety saves if you desire. Then we come into this area here. Much like the areas before, if we fall into these chasms, we die. We need to go down the ladder on our left. We'll go forward, turn and look at the ladder, and examine it. From here, you'll see a pathway directly in front of us. We're actually not going to go in that pathway. We're going to go in the pathway to the right. Then we'll come into a room that's filled with some water. From here, we want to use the Stone of Thirst. This will drain the water from this area. After it's drained, look down and examine the ladder to climb down the ladder. And then we're going to continue directly forward, climb the ladder in front of us. This brings us to the control room, where we're going to actually drain even more water. In this room, you want to go to the right, take another right, and then we'll see some valves. Now, these valves have a very particular pattern. I'm going to make a small safety save as well in this section. You want to examine this valve first, and you want to turn it left. Then you want to come to the second valve, and you want to turn it right. Then you want to come to the third valve, and you want to also turn it right. Afterwards, come to the end of this mechanism, and you'll see this little protrusion sticking out. We want to use the lever that we got from the bed in Agar's house. Then Lakmir appears and tells us more or less that we're on the right track. We can mash through this text. Then we turn, we examine the lever, and we pull the lever. There's a faint trickle of water can be heard. Lakmir tells us, good job, we solved the puzzle, which is sort of redundant, since he just appeared. And we get a very small scene where it shows us draining the water from where Caitlin was. Once we've drained the water, Lakmir will explain that our next destination is quite scary. After we're done with that, turn to the right and come this way. You'll see a door on our left. This door cannot be opened as far as I'm aware. So we instead want to come forward and we want to examine this ladder to leave. That ladder in particular can be a bit finicky to examine, so be wary of that. Once we get down the ladder, look to your left, and we're going to go up this ladder. And just continue to hold forward to exit this area. From here, look to your left, and we're going to go up this ladder. Now be very careful. If we fall off here, we die. And we need to go to our right. So turn to your right, and go through this door. And from here, turn right, and we're going to go back down towards the end of this area and through this door. From here, go forward, take another left, and down this corridor. From here, forward, and then a slight right through these double doors. And in this next area, we're going to go right, and through this entryway. This brings us to where Caitlin was, except now the water is drained, as we saw. And we can now enter the third dungeon, Tower 3. Thanks for watching.